Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Spiritual Fitness. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a second program on sadhana success, where we will discuss focus with your host, Vaish, veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. We have close to 20 members on Zoom and close to 50 members on Facebook. I have Shweka helping me out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome to the second episode of Success Sadhana.
Thank you so much. I'm right here. I'm focused, and glad to be in your focus also for just an hour today, because there's a lot we can do as living beings when we focus our minds. You get one free mind with every body, and when you get a human mind, you can do a lot with it. We hear so often about how underutilized the mind is, and that's really true. The ancient yoga teachings say that there's much more that we can do with our minds. In fact, amazing things that go unused if we just sit on the old mind couch and become mind couch potatoes, get all flabby. So we're going to go over some of the basics of focus today. It is a superpower. It is your superpower. And my proposition is, wherever you are in your life now, whatever progress you've made, you've achieved it through your superpower of focus. So why not increase it? How's that sound to everybody? Not terrible? Okay. Let's start off with one of the ancient practices of focus. And JM, if you could bring up the Nitai Gauranga slide.
Sure.
We're going to look at that. It's a mantra. Nitai Gauranga. I spelt it phonetically. A mantra meditation is a process through which we utilize one of the most powerful senses we have, and that's hearing, and bringing the focus back to the sound vibration that we ourselves create. And it's a spiritual formula. So this beautiful picture kind of indicates what happens to our hearts when we chant this mantra, Nitai Gauranga. The two avatars, Nitai and Gauranga, that open for us the channel of compassion and love in the world. And I'll say it a few times. I think I'm going to use a musical device just to get a little tune going here. And then you can follow along with me. And the object here of focus is simply to say the mantra and keep your mind fixed on the sound vibration. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, 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 Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Tai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. And now try closing your eyes. And we'll repeat the mantra again behind closed mics, and just keep your mind on the mantra as we repeat. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Now keeping your eyes closed, say the mantra in your mind and just follow the sound and the rhythm internally. And one more time. And rub your hands together to get some external sensation. Open your eyes. We'll come back into the room. So this mantra meditation I'll go into at the end, but it's a good place to start because it opens all the channels and helps us to focus our mind. Sound vibration also is powerful. It invokes a transcendental energy that helps us to stay in the flow of attention. So now I'm going to show a few slides that talk about focus as your superpower. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. So this is a thought that occurred to me a while back when I was noticing the difference between my mind in a focused state and when my mind was dragging me everywhere. Have you ever been in a situation where you were trying to accomplish something that was subtle? You were trying to think or read or write, and then there was perhaps a child in the room who was against the idea of you having some quiet time and perhaps was bouncing around, pulling things down, anything but keep your attention there. And there's kind of a contrast you might notice. The mind can be like an unruly child, and our intention may be to focus on one thing, but we get moved from one place to the next and feels kind of desperate and torturous. Whereas through practice, the yoga practice, coming to the point of ekagrata, or one-pointedness instead of multi-pointedness, we can feel a sense of being, that we exist. We can appreciate an object for what it is at that particular time in the present, not projecting in the future what's going to happen to it later or where did it come from. I'm just in the moment appreciating it in that ekagrata state. The word eka means one. Ekagrata means my mind comes to this focused position. So focus is nectar, distraction is torture. Here are a few principles of focus. First is our ability to focus is our best asset. Because as conscious beings, we're units of attentive energy. Putting it very clinically, consciousness is an amazing energy. In fact, it's unlimitedly and continuously amazing if we can look at it and observe what it actually is. There's a difference between the stones of the world and the living beings of the world. We're attentive, the stones aren't. And that attentive energy is amazing. What is it? How's it doing that? It's amazing. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, the teacher Krishna says, some describe that living being as amazing. Some see him as amazing. Others, even after hearing everything about it, can't understand how amazing it is. So this is the fundamental ontological situation of the living being, us. And as we're a unit of attentive energy. So We may think we have many assets in this world, but they're actually just passing through. They're wispy, non substantial. But our focus and our ability to focus is our greatest asset because it brings the power, the fulcrum of power of our free will, which is our attentiveness and our ability to focus, our conscious awareness in any particular place that we decide. That's our best asset. That's one of the first principle of focus. Nobody can take that away from you. Nobody. Except if we let it go fallow and we don't practice it, then we can even forget that we are units of attention. We can even forget that we have the power to decide where to put our attention. So the next principle, where your attention goes, your energy flows. I've kept this with me for many years, decades, and I've done several searches to find out its origin. It's unascribed, which is always interesting. Other people have used it in various contexts, but there's no definite absolute source through which this is marked. Nonetheless, it's extremely useful. I guarantee if you keep this mantra and you remember it, where your attention goes, your energy flows, you'll be able to pull yourself into the state of focus at any given time, depending on how strong your purpose is. So here's the question: where do you want to go? That's a good question. And in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a Sanskrit verse that says, Yanti Deva Vrta Devan Pitrin Yanti Pratir Vrta Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja Yanti Mam Yajinopi Mam. A lot of Sanskrit there, but the word Yanti, 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 and it means you can go wherever you wish. You're free to move about the universe because you only have to place your attention in the direction that you want to go, and eventually you'll go there. You'll start moving in that direction anywhere. And I'm not just talking about in this life, because the wisdom literatures describe how we're on a continuum and we're moving from one life to the next. We do have responsibility, not just for this one short lifetime, but for where we're going after as well. So this is an important point to remember. You have freedom to move where you wish. Just remember, it's up to you where you place your attention. So here are the two paths: the bound mind or the free mind. So KPM means the karmically prompted mind. And then the free mind is the deliberately engaged mind. So you have KPM and DEM, the two states or the two paths that the mind is on. And here's a little more definition for you before we take some reflections on this. What is karma anyway? You hear a lot about karma, instant karma, that's your karma. Karma is action forced by material consciousness. Because of what I've done in the past, I've developed a proclivity to move in a certain direction because there are latent impressions within my mind that become energized, and they push me to make a set of choices based on the past. So when I'm being moved right now because of what I did in the past, because of the impressions in my mind, I'm making choices. And I say, no, you have to take this one. And I think I'm making the choice, but I'm actually being pushed because of the impressions that are there within the subconscious. That's called karma. I'm not free. I'm not making free choice, actually. I think I am, but I'm not. So KPM, the karmically prompted mind, is action prompted by karmic momentum and urges. So when I'm being forced by urges, has that ever happened to any of you? There was an urge? In fact, here's some good advice I just got recently. Surf the urge. Don't try to put it away. Don't try to smash it, but surf on it. And just notice that it's there and let it dissipate over time. Karmically prompted mind. So this is what happens by default, is I'm forced into action prompted by karmic momentum and urges. So what's the antithesis? That's DEM, deliberately engaged mind. So the opposite of karma is akarma. And that means action prompted by spiritually guided intelligence. So the intelligence, the mind, actually, technically, the intelligence is above the mind. It's the adult in the room. The mind goes by impulse, the intelligence by reason. And when we fortify our intelligence, our buddhi, this is a practice of, or a stage of yoga called vivek, where we develop a kind of discrimination. We're the adult in the room. The intelligence becomes responsible. It's like, no, little mind, you can't do that now. Put it down. I said put it down. So this leads to DEM, the deliberately engaged mind. What is that? Action taken under good guidance and after deliberation. And then we actually become guided by the purified mind. So this is verified in the teachings on meditation in the Bhagavad Gita, also the Yoga Sutras, that the mind can become purified, so it actually becomes our friend. So when we're forced by urges, the mind is our enemy. When the mind becomes purified and we're deliberately taking action after we've fortified the mind, we've taken good guidance and we've deliberated. And what do I mean by that? Deliberate. There's the scales, like Libra. You've decided in advance what the consequences are going to be. You've had this happen before. You're about to go for it, and then you go like, I remember what happened last time, or I saw the film. I know the result of this. I know when I lived in Thailand for a little while, there were, on the police stations, they had hundreds of pictures of motorcycle accidents. People who have been killed or permanently injured because of riding motorcycles without helmets. And so one look at that, if someone would say, I'm not going to ride a motorcycle without a helmet, no matter how cool I think I look with my hair flying in the wind when I'm riding on it, because I understand the consequences. So there's myriad ways in which we can inform our mind and intelligence so that we're in this process of DEM, deliberately engaged mind. And this is part of the act of focus. So after this, describing this 5 states, we'll take a few reflections. So these 5 states are given by Patanjali Muni. He wrote the Yoga Sutras. It's kind of yoga psychology, an analyzation of the mind, way before modern psychology. And he describes these categories, the 5 states of mind. So there's dull, wandering, and distracted. You see there on the top level. These states are torturous, actually. They're not, we're not happy in these states, nor are we productive particularly at all. And then the 2 states that are yogically aligned, that is, we've done the work, the inner work, we've practiced, and we've come to these points of one-pointed mind. That's what I referred to earlier as ekagrata, and restrained. And these are very happy moments for a living being living in the body. So let's look at distraction, because distraction is something that we may not even be aware of nowadays because it's so prevalent. And also because I actually get used to it and think distraction is happiness, but it's not. But it's an unproductive state of mind, and it's actually not just non-productive and torturous, but it's also dangerous. There's a little film attached to that. Let's just watch that to get an idea from the practical life of any person what a distracted mind can do.
Sometimes our mind wanders. And when we snap back to reality, we have no idea what we missed or how long we were gone. Daydreaming isn't the only thing that causes this inattention blindness. When we talk on the phone while driving, there are periods when we go blind to our environment without realizing it. So billboards, cars, kids playing, even stop signs and red lights can pass us by unnoticed. Certain things may seem harmless, but, some activities just aren't safe to combine. Our brain is not wired to pay attention to more than one complex task at a time. What we're actually doing when we think we're multitasking is quickly shifting our focus from one activity to another. So while our mind is engaged in applying makeup, arguing with backseat drivers, fumbling for a water bottle, or a conversation, it's blind to the road. In fact, drivers are 4 times more likely to crash while talking on the phone, and 23 times more likely while texting. Driving can feel uneventful, but it really takes our full attention to keep the car on the road. We're surrounded by distractions that can hijack our focus. Whether we let them is up to us.
So the yoga teachings consider our bodies like a car. And when we're moving around the world without focus, we can be missing a lot. We can also endanger ourselves and others. And we definitely miss the nectar of life because focus is nectar. Distraction is torture. Now, before I go to the next sections, I have some practical exercises and a little more depth on what focus actually means. Let's take a couple of reflections because I like to hear from you. What things did you hear so far that stuck in your mind? You could write it on a popsicle stick and put it in your back pocket and pull it out. Later on, when you're standing in line, say, okay, yeah, this helps out. On your mark, get set, reflect.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Eric.
I heard that our ability to focus is our best asset. And I like that point that we are actually units of this attentive energy and that it's amazing and that people, even after they hear all about it, don't really understand it sometimes. I thought that was an interesting line from the Bhagavad Gita. And then I really like where attention goes, energy flows, and that we can go anywhere in the universe, even over multiple lifetimes. And just by putting our attention there, we'll start moving in that direction. And then the idea of if we can actually control our mind and use that focus, or if we just let our karma drive us through urges, and being able to deliberately go where we want to go instead of being driven by our momentum.
Oh, thank you so much for the volumes of reflections there. Really helpful. And I see we got some practical thing from Linda here who said, why don't you read that, JM?
Sure.
Some of the chats.
Thank you for the link, JM. We will send to my supervisor when he gives me 5 tasks at once.
Yeah. Also, there's some...
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've got quite a few things coming in. We have Mayank who says the mantra, serve the urge, is very helpful. What are the best ways to serve the urges? Is a question.
The point is that whatever you resist persists. So instead of trying to push it away, just notice the waves of energy and let it dissipate on its own. And I'll talk about it in a couple more slides, but it has to do with TLN, or tender loving neglect.
Angie agrees distraction is torture. And Subhadra says action prompted by karmic momentum and urges versus action taken under good guidance and after deliberation. I think she is trying to differentiate them. Deb says, at work, I often feel like I'm getting a lot of work done because I'm multitasking, right up until I'm totally lost with what I'm doing.
Well, great. Welcome to my world. Now you know how I feel all the time.
Mala says, scary that we think and adopt a distraction as norm and don't realize it. Mind is set to do one at a time.
Yeah, this is an important point, Mala. Thanks for bringing it up because actually the Yoga and Wisdom texts talk about how we actually get addicted to distraction. It's a state of mind, and we're the ones observing the state of mind. We, as the units of attention, we're not our minds. The mind's like a movie screen, and we get attached to the mode of distraction. So at first, a peace of mind, although people talk about it all the time, I wish I had peace of mind, is an acquired taste. Because the actual peace of and feeling or drinking the nectar of my existence in the present takes a little while to get used to. Because I'm so used to distracted mind, I think like, come on, nothing's happening. I have to do something right now. Instead of just being there. There was a saying that sometimes parents would say to kids who were just sitting around the house on a nice afternoon or something. They say, don't just sit there, do something. And somebody wrote a book on meditation. It's called Don't Just Do Something, Sit There. So you can be in a state of meditation and focus, obviously, when you're moving about. And we'll talk about that in a second too. But the point is, can I sit there just peacefully without being distracted? Tender loving neglect, yes. That's good advice for urges and also for orchids. Orchids like tender loving neglect. They like to be put in a corner somewhere and not fussed over. Otherwise, they get all distressed. So, yeah.
Ronak says, this presentation reminded me of the idea of paying attention. It makes me think our attention is our wealth in a way that we spend. And just like we are conscious of where we spend our material wealth, we need to be conscious of where we spend our attention.
Oh, thank you for the comment. That was very helpful. Yeah, thinking of it in terms of our wealth, it's our greatest asset. Let's look at a couple more slides. Are you all okay out there? Just give me a thumbs up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thanks, Gary. Wolf gave a heart. Thanks. Okay, Ronak. Thanks, Subhadra. Gary, thanks. Okay, I'll keep going. Have you ever seen this little sentence on your phone, searching for network? Remember looking at that, and I was thinking one day how the mind is always searching for network, especially when I'm traveling. You look at the phone and it's going back and forth. Where's the network? I need a network. I have to hook to some network somewhere. And if I don't take charge of which network my phone hooks up to, even now, if I walk out the door of my phone, it'll hook onto somebody's network somewhere. I don't know why it keeps hooking onto Xfinity. I have to look into that, but don't go there. I don't know what that is. So the mind is like that too. It's always searching for the network to join. So choose your network or it will be chosen for you. Decide where you're going to hook your mind to, pre-program it to which is the network that I want to be hooked into. They're not all equal. They're not all equal. Subhadra, did you want to make a point? Okay, I saw the hand up.
I just didn't have a thumbs up. I have a.
Okay. They didn't give you a thumbs up on your reaction bar? That's horrible. Okay. All right, we'll do a few more slides. So yoga, again, it means linking, huge. It's the way we link. So putting it and continuing the metaphor of the searching for network, yoga means linking your mind to the ultimate network. There are networks and there are networks. And we can actually network our mind or link it to an ultimate network. We call that the Brahman. There's a spiritual network that the mind can be connected to. In fact, the human mind is very high technology, higher technology than an iPhone. And it is designed to network with the higher spiritual energies. That's what mantra is all about. And you can train the mind to hook into that. No extra charge, just a little bit of paying with your most important asset, your attention, and you can learn to hook into that network. There are volumes written about it also, about the experience. Albert Einstein, I heard this recently and I had to research it a little bit. Who knows if it's apocryphal, but there seems to be quite a bit of evidence for him saying this. The way I heard it was his girlfriend said to him once, why don't you write things down? All the time. You calculating, he said, I only have one idea. And he had one idea, which was to find how there's a source to everything else. One equation that explains everything. That's my one idea I have, he said. So this idea of staying focused on what your main purpose is, not millions of them. And that brings me to one of the metaphors that lends best to the yogic way of life and also to focus, which is the magnifying glass, a source of constant fascination for young kids. I know it was for my brother and me when we got magnifying glasses, ostensibly because we'd have to learn survival in the wilderness if we were ever backpacking and we got lost and we'd have to start a fire. So we took advantage of that to see how many things we could start alight by using the heat of the sun, and we'd be in the backyard finding little pieces of paper and little stacks of leaves and say, how long does it take to get them burning? So how does that work? Photons pass through a convex lens and are centered through a single point. So it's shaped in a particular way that brings everything to a point. That's focus. It's the shape that draws them to a single point. So the way I'm continuing this metaphor in our lives is ... Yoga means reshaping your life to focus on a single purposeful point. There is a way in which we make our lives convex. I like this picture because it's going towards the energy of the sun, going towards the sun. Isn't that kind of a, inspiring picture? Sort of represents the subject of a life dedicated to going towards the light. And so there's a way in which we can design our lives so that they're convex, meaning that everything slopes down into a single point. And that has to do with our overall focus in life. There's this section of the wisdom literature called Srimad Bhagavatam. And in it, there's the tale of the Avaduta Brahmana. He's wandering in the wilderness and a king meets him and asks him how he became enlightened. And the Avaduta, the yogi in the forest, tells about his 24 gurus. And the king looks around and said, I don't see anybody here, but to speak of any gurus. How did you become enlightened again? And so this yogi starts to tell about how he's learned from the mountain, from the tree, from the water, from the Karari hawk, and enlisting his 24 gurus, which someday we'll talk about here. He mentions the arrow maker. And in a town once, he happened to see how the arrow maker, who is sitting making arrows by hand and making sure they're perfectly straight, was so focused that when the king and his retinue came through the town with bands playing, jugglers, elephants, dancers, and afterwards someone asked, did you see the king? And the arrow maker said, huh? What king? He said, you didn't see the parade? Huh? What parade? No parade, no king. Fully focused on making the arrow. So he describes that guru, the arrow maker, taught him the power of exclusive focus, how one goes into a kind of trance on the task at hand and becomes fully aware of what he is doing right now. Let's hear what Wolf said. Can you read that?
Yeah, Wolf asks why this wisdom is not embedded into the instincts and needs to be taught every generation, please.
Well, I don't necessarily, Wolf, although this is unusual, agree with your premise. It is an instinct, but it gets dulled by a kind of complacency that comes up through conditioning. But just as we have a need for drinking water because we have a thirst for water, we get hungry, there's food. There's a counterpart for every urge that we have. And we can look through history of humankind and see that humans have always had some kind of spiritual quest in every culture. No matter how simple the culture, can be a non-agrarian culture, it can be a highly developed culture. You go through cities, you'll find mosques, churches, temples, even in natural places. I mean, if you go through Muir Woods, you'll find a cathedral in the redwoods. There's a communion with nature, something spiritual. In the Constitution of the United States, it says these truths are self-evident. The truths are self-evident that we are all created equal, and that, there are values that we have naturally, instinctively, that there are certain things that are right and certain things that are wrong. These are all metaphysical. They're all spiritual urges because they can't be measured on a material level. Therefore, they're meta. They're beyond the physical. However, I agree with you that it's in a progressive culture, they need to be thanks, Wolf. They need to be inculcated. I need to inculcate them within myself in order to stay above the fray of material conditioning and that mind that's prompted by urges and previous karmas and so forth. That's important. Hey, Abhi, good to see you. Thanks for coming. Yes, JM.
Avi, did you have any questions?
No, I did not. I was actually just listening in.
Please feel free, and thank you for being here.
Somewhat ironically, I was actually distracted by email.
We didn't pay him to say that, by the way. Thanks, Abhi.
So we have S, who says, how do we decide what to focus on, what the main purpose is?
Ooh, that's a good one. Let's look at a few more slides, and
Yes.
I'll answer it in as we're reviewing them together. Unless anybody gets bored of slides, and you could just, put a little bomb symbol in there somewhere. So, what is the power of a focused mind? It burns obstacles to ashes. And to answer your question, these two words that I put in the first bullet point, they're in Sanskrit, but I'll translate them. Tivrena bhakti. So bhakti means it's a type of yoga, the yoga of love and gratitude. And when we become directed by an awareness of our relationship with not just this world, but with our original conscious source. Our original conscious source is described in the wisdom literatures as being love and beauty personified. Personified means there's an intelligent personal source that's lovable and gives love. There's a reciprocation there. So bhakti is that kind of love. And tivrena means an intensity of purpose in that love, or the intensity that comes from that love. Everyone here knows, I think I'm safe to assume, they have experienced the intensity of a kind of love, a love for a child, a love for a lover, a love for something where you become fully connected, and there's a sense of connectedness that comes naturally through this loving propensity. So, as the wisdom literature called the nectar of devotion points out, that loving propensity is natural in every living being. It's the nature of our consciousness to be attached and to love. And so when we direct that towards our original conscious source, it can expand unlimitedly and it's never severed. So that's called Tivrena Bhakti. And the wisdom literatures that direct us how to connect to our original conscious source then are the one of the directing forces that you that you talked about, and the way of life that supports that kind of one-pointed attention to our source is the kind of direction that's helpful. And then the second Sanskrit word verse here is Jnana-Agni. So Jnana means knowledge and Agni means fire. So when you have this point of attention on informing your intellect, well-reasoned faith, understanding of how we're not our body and so forth, and we come to see it for ourselves, this is called Jnana-Agni, a fire of knowledge. And Sarva-Karmana means all the karma, the urges, become burned up because of the power of that fire of knowledge. I mean, you wouldn't eat a piece of wood, right? Unless you're a termite, but not as a human. You look at it, it's like, no, that's not very good. So jnana means we get this discriminatory power. Okay, we'll keep moving and get a few more. So life's purpose. This is one of the areas of focus. I highly recommend, if you take time to write down your main purpose in life, or put your top 10 purposes in life and try to put them in order. If you spend some time, an hour, some hours, some days, some weeks, I promise you that it will energize you and everybody else in your life as well. It's so powerful, this powerful focus on your purpose. So if you discern, and it's your right to discern, that's why they like to say, do the wisdom literatures, you have free will to decide. So decide your life's purpose. That's your magnifying glass. That's where you get your power. If you don't have it, for instance, if I stand outside, I don't know, in San Francisco maybe, giant stadium, and I ask people coming out, what's your main purpose in life? What do people say? Get out of here, kid. What are you talking about? I'm going to a baseball game. Purpose, focus, progress. Purpose leads to, that's what those two arrows mean, focus, and focus leads to progress. So focus, what is your main purpose in life? Understand it. Here's one of my favorite quotes. The successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus. So anyone can become extraordinary by employing the superpower of focus. And these are the symptoms, or some of them. There's a sense of urgency, a reluctance to waste time, no zoning out, and an optimism about life. When I have my purpose in line, when I'm focused on my main purpose, then moving forward, getting up in the morning, all these types of things, I have a direction. I'm hooked into a network and I feel optimistic. I'll take a couple more reflections before I go to the last parts. Anything that you heard in that last point, in those last points that stuck?
Few questions on the chat.
Oh,
Shubham
good.
asks, how do you balance focus with awareness?
Well, let me put up something here in the chat that here are some areas of focus. There are various areas of focus. Like I mentioned, purpose of life. Also, good to answer some of these for ourselves. What's our ultimate object of attention? I would argue, and you could investigate this, that our attention wanders, as I said, like looking for a network. You know, you're driving down the freeway and you look at billboards and everyone's vying for your attention. One says, you need this, it's a drink. Another one says you need to have insurance. I don't know what else, lots of things. And they all want your attention. So which one thing, one product idea on those billboards would be your ultimate object of attention? Is there one on the, for instance, here in the Bay Area, we have the 101 freeway, lots of billboards you've seen. Do any one of them meet that criteria of being your ultimate object of attention? Anyone you've seen so far? So these points are discussed in the wisdom literatures, where to find an ultimate object of attention, because otherwise you're going to search over and over again for another one. Speed limit, wolf. After that, we have various goals. So when we have goals, then the mind also feels satisfied and we can focus on individual goals. So make sure you're clear on what your goals are that are moving you towards your ultimate object of attention, your purpose life. And then there's the task at hand. When you're in the task at hand, be there. Let's see what else, JM. And maybe I didn't answer that last question, so let me know if I didn't.
Sure. Maricela asks, I always struggle to focus in one thing at a time. I used to have several things initiated but not completed. What practices can help me focus more?
Okay, let's go back to the slides. I have a few practices here at the end. Let's get a little practical. What do you think? Okay, so we want to know what's the best return on attention. If we're attentive to the body, which we have to be to some degree, I mean, you got to take time to sleep, right? You got to take a little time to have a drink of water, have some food. Body's got to be taken care of. But if you put full attention on the body, it's diminishing returns. I know a while back I had a painter who was looking at one of the sides of my house, and it's like, should I have that redone before you paint it? He said, diminishing returns. It's not worth it. No one sees this part of the house anyway. So look and see. The body, it has diminishing returns. So the body's not the ultimate object of attention. And if I give all my attention to my body, I'll be understandably really disappointed. I'm not going to get the best return on my attention. Attention to Atma and Ishvara. These are two terms we've discussed before. The Atma refers to the conscious self that you are. We are Atmas. We are units of attention. And then there's Ishvara, who's like the source of all the Atmas. Like there's the sun, and then there's the photons that come from the sun. And these are both in a higher energy. They're the spiritual energy. And when you put your attention there, you get ever-increasing returns. That's not a bad ROA, return on your attention, ever-increasing returns. It makes my ears perk up. Where do I get my best return? So then, there's different places that we place our attention. People, animals, plants, things. And I can guarantee you this is a law, and that the quality of attention that you give to people, animals, plants will determine the quality of your relationship. And we should also, I threw in things because we may have a relationship with things that is inordinate of their position. And therefore, just as within the body, which is a thing, if I give too much attention or an inordinate amount of time, then my relationship will not pay off. But this is a way in which we can apportion our attention accordingly to have smooth relationships. Make it quality attention. If you don't like what you're being subjected to, change the subject. That's our freedom to change the channel at any time. You don't have to subject yourself to this, whatever it may be. So your mind is a collecting point, and so you can ask yourself, what am I collecting? Here's a few affirmations for you for focus. I review my purpose every morning. If you do this, I promise you, your life will be different and very positive and practical. I plan each day in advance. I prioritize and work on the most important tasks first. I work single-mindedly to complete each task before moving on to another. Try those affirmations at night, in the morning, and get directed. Start moving in that way, and you'll notice how much better you feel. And here's an experiment. You can do this at any time of the day. When you feel anxious about your daily life, take 1 minute to de-link. Is that an actual word? Here's how to do it. Notice your breath. Notice your thoughts. Notice that you're the watcher or witness of your breath, your thoughts, your body. You're not your body. You're not your mind. You're not your thoughts. You're the witness. And when urges, thoughts, stand up, move on, come, then apply this principle of TLN, tender, loving neglect. And finally, when after a few seconds or a moment, you're able to get in this detached state of a witness, then chant. Do your mantra right at that time. And keep the mantra going, and you'll be able to hold that state of one-pointedness, and you'll be able to taste the nectar of focus. And when you taste that nectar of focus, then it gives you perspective to deal with all the life situations that you're going through at the time. And you'll be able to do it dispassionately, but methodically. Okay, now let's take a few reflections or questions. Anything we left on the field or we didn't bring to the field?
Yeah, so Ronak had said the picture of walking towards the sun reminded me of the phrase Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya.
Okay, that's a Sanskrit verse. Tamasi ma Jyotirgama. It means don't stay in darkness, but go towards the light. Move towards the light. That's an old admonition. It's on a lot of walls of yoga studios around the world, and it's from the really ancient writings. It says, this is your purpose, is to try for the light, go for the light.
Wolf says to collect as many emotional experiences in this reconnaissance mission called Life as Humans in order to deposit them on the other side when we cross back home, I think. No wonder I tend to lean towards animal.
Thanks, Wolf.
And Subhadra says, do we need to be more concrete for our purpose? I tend to get idealistic about my purpose.
Well, both things are important because it's helpful to have an overarching idea of the purpose of life. Like, why am I here in the first place? That's a good question to answer. And the wisdom literatures give this as the first answer. There's a book of codes, spiritual codes, called the Vedanta Sutra. And it starts with this. Atato Brahma Jignasa. That's Sanskrit for, therefore, because you've tried everything else, you've looked everywhere else, you've gone into every billboard website, everything, and it didn't give you the best return on your attention. It said, now is the time to inquire about your highest purpose. It says, start there. Put that at the top of your list. What is your highest purpose? When you have that in place, then you can start making other seemingly more mundane decisions based on that. For instance, okay, where should I live? Then you compare that to what does that match up with my ultimate purpose? It really gives you a point of reference for deciding what to do on a day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year level when you have your ultimate purpose in mind. Go ahead, JM.
Linda says, do we try to push our thoughts away? I heard one time we should take each thought and envision we are putting them in a flame to clear our mind.
Well, that's interesting, putting them in a flame. Pushing away often is counterproductive because we just energize the thought energy itself. But thoughts in and of themselves are not bad, and there's no indication that thoughts can be completely eradicated, but they can be transformed into a non-reactive thoughts, or thoughts that aren't coming from karma. They're coming from a higher spiritual source. So we're always some way engaged, just like even when we sleep, we're dreaming. And then when we're in our minds, we'll notice that there are different levels of energy. And so the mantra meditation, as an example, it connects us with a higher type of energy besides just the thought energy that's there as a combination and permutation of all the other kinds of stimuli that we've collected from the environment. So
Anna
it's more of
said,
a transference, transforming our thoughts into spiritual thoughts. I'm sorry, go ahead, JM.
that's okay. Was there anyone asking a question? No. Anna says, there is a lot of pressure to multitask and let us lose our focus. Same as pressure for urgent things makes us lose the important ones.
Urgent things?
Yeah, pressure for urgent things makes us lose the important ones. So this is urgent, so we want to get it done, so lose the important ones.
Yeah, do you think about the word emergency? It's an interesting word because we're talking about something that's emerging. So things are constantly emerging in our lives. There are thoughts that are emerging. There are situations that are emerging in our life, and they are emergencies. They become an issue for us. So managing our expectation, we can, if we're expecting emergencies, if we're expecting urgencies to come up, we account for those and we fortify ourselves regularly so that we're ready to meet them. They're not as urgent, or they're not disturbing. They may be as urgent, but they're not disturbing to me. So one of the practices is to take time every day to become centered and focused and taste the nectar of focus, enter into the practice of mantra meditation, and then when you greet the day, the rest of the day, you'll be able to handily deal with the various items that need your attention, and some of them emerge quite quickly and they seem sort of drastic, but you'll be able to deal with them in a much better way. Jam, you're smiling. What else do you have?
Those are the points. Anyone has any question they can ask. There was one question about the slides. Where can we get them? We are trying to make arrangements for it, so I'll submit a written reply to that.
All right. We have a couple minutes left. Let's go out with some mantra meditation, and we'll follow the process. First of all, take a moment and just sit up a little straighter than you were a second ago. It brings your mind to attention, but keep your mind alert. And close your eyes. And if you would put up, anyway, we can do that with eyes closed, so we don't need to put a slide. That's okay. And we're going to meditate again on the Nitai Gauranga mantra. And when we do this, keep your mind on the sound of the mantra and just repeat it along with me. And then whenever your mind starts to veer in a particular direction, just gently come back and listen to the mantra. So first of all, be aware of your breath and breathe. Notice your thoughts. Notice that you're the witness of your thoughts. And being aloof from your body and your mind. Now we'll repeat the mantra. And if you'd like, you can say it along with me behind closed mics. Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. And open your eyes back up, come into the room. Thank you very much for giving your most valuable asset for the last hour. I'm deeply touched that you gave your attention and focus to this. I hope there was a word, a phrase, an idea, a mantra that you're taking away that makes your life better. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Now, up in the Himalayas, the yogis who meditate in caves, they spend weeks in samadhi meditation, and they come out on the path in the bright daylight looking for roots, a couple fruits to take back before they meditate again. And when they see each other on the path, they raise their hand and they say this phrase, Hari Bol, which means keep the transcendental vibration going. So since we're all in little caves right now, we're in a cave-like room, we're in a cave-like box here, let's open up our mics for a second, open up your screen if you can, and open up your cave, and everyone can say, Haribol!
Haribol!
Haribol! See you next week. Thank you. Thank you.
Haribol. Thank